Hey everyone, welcome to How to DM, How to Dungeon Master. I'm Shelly Mazanoble, and I am joined by a legend. I don't think that is a misnomer here. A legend in the D&D community, Mr. Teos Abadía, otherwise known by most people probably as Alpha Stream.
That could be.
This legendary guest that I have here is a prolific author and developer whose credits include work published by Wizards of the Coast, Penny Arcade, MCDM, Hasbro, which I did not know that you were working on that as well.
I worked on the HeroQuest project. Yeah.
That's amazing. And several organized play programs. He's also the co-host of the Mastering Dungeons podcast. And I think an all-around wonderful guy who is going to share some very cool ideas with me and all of us about collaborative campaign world building. Now, I think...
After that wonderful intro, I can only let us down. You're too kind, Shelly. Thank you.
Well, we can just totally cut that intro if this doesn't go well.
Great.
I'll record a new one. Not a chance. You are a shining light in this community. Everybody loves you. So, collaborative campaign world building. There is a word in there of those three that I think would be really scary to new dungeon masters. Can you guess which word that is? I'll just tell
collaborative.
you. Not a chance. Nope. I feel like that one we're good with. World building.
Is it?
I think that would be scary to a new dungeon master because now I'll have to build my own world here. What? But you're saying This is actually a way that we can immerse players and dungeon masters into this campaign. And this is actually essentially something that's going to make it more fun and easier and just better all around. What?
Yeah.
What do you have planned here?
Yeah,
Tell me about
this.
this.
And I think that, well, all right, I'm going to tell you. We're going to talk about the concept.
Yes.
And I love, by the way, the How to Be a DM series. So it's an honor to be here following in the footsteps of the great people you've had on. What we're going to try to do here is we're going to talk about the concept and where it came from. Okay. We're going to run through the process, and we're going to use two examples.
Okay.
Because you can do this in either way. You can do it with a published Wizards of the Coast adventure.
Okay.
And we'll use Rime of the Frost Maiden as an example, or with your own homebrew campaign. So we'll do both. After we go through these 6 steps, you and I are going to create our own little campaign.
I don't know about that. But okay, let's do it. I am a little nervous. I told Greg earlier, I'm a little nervous about this, but okay.
I'm a little nervous too. So.
Oh, okay.
All right, so here's the concept, right? Normally what happens is that if you're brave enough to create a campaign world, which really, I think that's what dreams are made of, you come up with this as DM. You just sit down and you're like, oh, and this world and has this, and there's islands off the coast and da-da-da, and you dream it all up. And then you get together with your players and you're like, hey, welcome to my world. And hopefully there's not like a 60-page handout, but because they're not going to read it or remember it.
No, they won't.
But you're going to start playing and they will slowly start learning about the world, but so much. And in my experience, it's hard to get the players to really remember these things, right? Like, I don't know, have you had that experience playing in a world where you're like, what are the details again?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I am 100% that player that's like, where are we again? What was the name of this town?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so what this comes from, it comes from the first time I saw something like this was in the Dresden Files role-playing game, which is part of the Fate system. But it is also found, if you've ever played the kind of card game, board game, role-playing game Fiasco,
yes.
You get to create these sort of relationships on the fly, right? Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like that kind of concept. So we're going to take these concepts and we're going to kind of make them in sort of a D&D version. And we're going to work together through a series of steps to see what resonates amongst the various players. And a golden rule here is that if we hit a step and nobody comes up with a cool idea, that's okay. We're just going to leave that for the DM to fill out.
Okay.
So it's totally fine if it doesn't work. And again, we can use this with a published adventure or with our own home campaign.
Okay.
It's worth noting that this process works really well with kids too, not just adults.
Okay.
Kids love this sort of dreaming. Like anything else where they're excited, they go crazy. So you have to have some cool down time in between the steps, give them bowls of snacks. But it's great. I used it in my kids campaign that I ran. I also used it when I ran Tomb of Annihilation with my adult friends. And I used it as a sort of process when my son and I wrote an adventure together.
Very cool.
This is a pretty good process. And what we're going to do first, step one, is we're going to, as DM, we're going to give a little bit of our voice and provide initial guidance. Because sometimes as DM, we want a certain thing, and that's okay. It's okay to want something as DM. So here's where you get a chance to say it. So I might say, hey, everybody, I'm running Rime of the Frost Maiden, but I want to customize it with your ideas. The campaign's going to have elements of horror and survival. We're now going to go through this process together to decide how the campaign starts out. Okay, so that's what I'm saying up front. Or maybe I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to make my own campaign. I'd like it to be set in a world similar to the Forgotten Realms, but maybe with more clockwork and steampunk elements.
Okay.
And that kind of gets everybody understanding, okay, all right, that's what's going on, right? If we don't have any preconceptions, then we can just talk about that now. Like we could say, all right, the initial guidance, what are the really big types of campaigns you like? Like someone might like, I want to be a mercantile campaign. I want to be tomb delving, a frontier town, clearing the wilderness, anything like that, inherit a type of business. So we can put those really big concepts out at this stage. And that's our initial guidance. So far, so good?
Yeah.
Okay. So now step 2 is a big one. This helps us really visualize things, which is the starting area. And that's why I like to use this as the second step. Even with a published campaign, this can be about the emphasis of where we're starting. So here, what we're going to do is we're all going to throw out ideas. Now we're in the discussion stage. We're all going to toss ideas on where in this world we should start and what it kind of feels like. So if it's published, I'm running Rime of the Frost Maiden, I might say to them, hey, here's a quick handout with a brief description of the 10 towns. Which seem coolest to you? Which one would you want to start the campaign in? And so they'll take some time and, I really like, Dugan's Hall, and I really like, the East Haven. And we throw these ideas around, and now I as DM know what's of interest to them. Like, this is awesome. There are 10 towns. I wasn't going to go to all of them anyway. And now I know the 3 they really care about, and we all know where we're starting, and we all know about them.
Yeah.
It's a huge win. We're just at the beginning of the process, right? Or if this is a custom campaign, we could say, all right, what are some ideas for the starting area in this sort of Forgotten Realms-like world with steampunk elements? And someone might say, what about a underground city in the Underdark? And there's merchants going around and a lot of this sort of trade taking place in this trade city. Or someone might say, and a fun thing to do is actually take movies or real world places and use those as inspiration and tell the players at this stage, hey, feel free to throw out, like, what's a movie that you would love to play a campaign around? So someone might say, I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's what I would say. Okay, what about an ancient Cairo type city with these huge tombs that god kings or something, forgotten people, used to create and whatever. Or someone might say a fantasy version of Portland or Seattle, right? And even if you don't use these ideas as everybody's tossing them around, some of them might really sound cool to people. So you might say, all right, we're not going to be in a desert world, but that idea of like forgotten tombs to lost gods is something that people really liked. So I'm going to keep that one too, even though we might go with that we're at, on the edge of, maybe we're in a sleepy fishing village, but there could be these underwater tombs that are huge and enormous, right? And we start finding out about them later. So ideally, we talk through this, we throw out all these cool ideas, and we kind of settle on what we like, right? We come up with this one that sounds really neat to everybody. And it's great for both one player at least, and for the DM to take notes. Because the DM can add secrets, right? We can sort of be like, oh, we come up with like things they say, and we're like, oh, and that could be because of this reason. We don't say that, right? And it might seem as we go through this process like we're spoiling the thing, but it'll be less spoilery than a trailer for a movie. But it'll have the impact of a trailer, kind of where it excites you and gives you ideas, right? And things will be recognizable. But there are always going to be secrets that we can add as DM to it behind the scene.
So,
all right, so we've got,
when you're doing, oh, sorry, but
no, go ahead.
When you're doing this with the players, are have they already created their characters, or do they do that after? Like, does some of this inform some of their character backstories and whatnot?
Fantastic. Great question. I would say after.
They create characters
because then
after.
they can shape to the world, right? So if we're going to be like a bunch of rogues in a seedy Chicago-like gang environment, right? Then hey, let's go with like that. Lets you create the bard musician that is, jazz style, and the tough ex-gang member, and right now you really fit in because you created characters to those concepts.
Okay, makes sense.
All right, so step 3, we have our broad area that we chose. Now we can come up with 3 cool locations that let us drill further down into the setting. And these should be places that are going to be cool, important, or otherwise featured in the campaign and just capture the imaginations of the player. Yeah, my dog was saying hi. So like it's Rime of the Frost Maiden, right? And we might say, all right, we have a house where no one enters or leaves ever. It's an old place, but never seems to need repair. What's going on there, right? Mm-hmm. Some other player might say, how about the mayor or speaker's house? There's like strange noises coming from the basement. A stall where an old woman sells meat on a stick. And no matter how hard it is to find game, she's always got food.
Love all of these. These are so good.
And so, what these let us do, the players now have all these kinds of ideas, but we as DM get to choose what's the reality. So this woman who's selling meat on a stick, like she could be some, terrible creature, a fiend, a hag, whatever. Or she could actually be a really kindly person who maybe she's part of she's a member of the Harpers or something. And she has, sources of food brought in so that she can bring everybody to her stall and gather information. And she's actually going to be a great ally to the party. You as DM will get to decide that, right? But you've got this location that's going to register with players. When they see that woman selling meat on a stick, they're, oh, yeah, okay, I want to talk to her, right? It's awesome. So if we were thinking about not Rime of the Frost Maiden, but like our own custom campaign, someone might throw out the idea of like an old well covered in spider webs, an obelisk that has strange writing that no one can decipher, the street where carnivals are held, and several times a year, kind of like Mardi Gras, like there's sound and music and everybody comes out onto the street, So any of these kinds of locations, we throw all these ideas around. We're officially picking 3, though as DM, we might write down other ones if we like them. One that I like is the idea of like a tavern where everybody knows your name, but more goes on than meets the eye.
Okay.
Right? Like that's a cool place. And a location like that could even be where the characters start. And that could be kind of neat. Like this is your home base.
All good adventures start in a tavern, don't they?
They often do. So that was step 3. We got 3 cool locations. Now we're going to get 3 themes to guide play. And these I like to think of as in a movie trailer where it says, in a world where, right? Or things that people might say like out loud, kind of mutter to themselves on a daily basis as they're walking around. Because there's sort of known things about these places, and they're gonna guide play in the setting. So Rime of the Frost Maiden, we might say, the 10 towns must be united. We aim to profit. Secrets await discovery. Like those could be 3 themes, right? And could be a lot of fun for players to go through. In a custom world, we might come up with something like, the leadership is corrupt. The forest isn't our friend. City on the brink of violence. And it's great if they tend to be sort of things that are a little like dark, problematic, things that heroes need to deal with and interact with, right? Those can be those themes. And again, like in a world where the leadership is corrupt. Now we got, okay,
yes.
Neat, right? So that's the idea here. And in this stage, we can go further if we want. And this is where it's important to say that some players will love detailing things. Like they're the kind of player that if you say, you walk into the tavern, tell me about the tavern keeper, they'll launch into telling you all about the tavern keeper. But there are other players that you say, you walk into the tavern, tell me about the tavern keeper, they go, I'm not the DM, you are. you tell me about the Tavern Keeper DM. That's your job. And that's totally fine. Like, there's no wrong way to play. And when I work with my players, often there'll be a point where they go, I don't want to tell you. I want you to tell me. Mm-hmm. Cool. When that happens, we're all good and we skip to the next step. But you can ask some questions like, is it a time of stability? Are there other cities nearby? What is the climate like? And you can pre-prepare some of these questions and then just toss them out. Do natural elements like storms threaten civilization? And for all of these, the hope is that people are going to trade ideas and talk. So there's some excitement. And again, as DM, you're going to jot down all these notes, right? Like, oh, okay, this is a place that's racked by storms, and the civilization has not tamed the wilderness in the surrounding area. Challenging is traveling. Okay, or travel is challenging. Okay, I'm going to write that all down, right? And this is kind of useful fodder as we start to detail things out. You can even go as far as asking people to detail some of these themes. So if they were with a theme like the leadership is corrupt, you could say, who's the leader? Oh, it's Draco Van Alcinoy. Okay, and tell me about the leadership. Oh, well, Van Alcinoy was the leader of a small faction that just came to power and nobody knows how. Mm. Okay, great. Now we got some stuff to play off of, right? Like, that's great. And it's not like you have to run a totally improv campaign. It's more that you're taking this back and you're working with that. And again, to the extent that you want to, like, you can ask questions and shape things, and we can even be using that published adventure. So we could just say, like, the mayor of town, tell me something about the people they surround themselves with, and just see what they say, right? Because most of the towns that are described in the adventure don't tell you that much about the people around the speaker of each town. So let the players do a little bit of that, and you can play with that. We can also tie things together. So we can say, you gave me a theme, like the leadership is corrupt. I can tie that behind the scenes later when I go home. I can tie the location and the theme together. The leadership is corrupt, and there's this tavern where everybody knows your name, but more is going on than we think. Maybe that's where the rebels are, and they're mounting the rebellion to oppose the leadership, and you can be a part of that, right? So we can link these together after we're done with all this. All right, so that was step 4. We have our 3 themes. That's really important. Now we want to give the players the opportunity to give us 3 threats to the setting. And this is where they can just dream wild, dream big about what kind of things they want to fight, basically.
Oh, nice.
And it can be generic or it can be specific. Pirate goblins, an invading army. There are creepy things that are kidnapping people, right? Those all just work regardless of what campaign, aberrations, beholders. It can be specific or general. And if the players like this kind of detailing, we could ask them, tell me about one of those creatures that's rumored to exist. So if there are creepy things that kidnap common folk, they might say, there's this mummy. She used to be a queen in the area. Some terrible curse happened. That's what people say. Okay. There's an invading army. It's said they have a shapeshifter that can look like anyone. Oh, cool. Pirate goblins. Yeah, they've got a construct made out of cannons, right? All right, great. And now I get to put that together and have some fun with it. Or not. You can keep it really simple, whatever you like, and you can ask as many questions as there is at work. And you can, again, link this together, right? There's an invading army that actually is allied with the corrupt government. It's how they're going to secure take down the rebels. I don't know. We can play with that, however. And so you can link all these, again, link these steps together. And now we're at the last step. And the last step, number 6, is group, patron, and franchise. And this is where I love to use the rules that show up in Tasha's for group patrons. They were in Eberron before that. It lets the party be a member of some group that sort of supports them in some way. And that ties them into the setting. And so because of this type of approach we're doing for collaborative campaign building, it's awesome to be...
Your dog is a big fan of group patrons, too.
He's a collaborator at heart.
He wants to build a world with us.
He wants to build the world, and I don't let him. He's also good at stealing food off counters. He's really soft, though.
That's the dog's best traits. Take it away with everything.
So when we're doing this group patrons, we can say things like, hey, do you want to be part of like an Academy of Sciences in this city? Or what kind of group would you see yourselves allying with? The franchise rules appear in Acquisitions Incorporated, and they let you build a business and similarly belong to a large organization. So you could also do that. Like you're in the 10 towns, maybe you are here serving the Harpers, and the idea is for you to sort of lead one of the areas, right? And become mayor or speaker. Or maybe you are independent and you see yourselves as sort of owning a business here and settling down, right? Bringing prosperity to this place through a business. We're going to start a tavern or something like that. And there are places in the Icewind Dale where that works perfectly. So this is a great final step to bring in those rules in that are going to further cement relationships between players and the setting.
So what about if you're doing this with newer players that maybe don't have a ton of knowledge about D&D lore or locations, or what if they're like just pulling things out, like, I want spaceships and...
Yeah, I do too.
I know, who doesn't really, but
Wait, Shelley, are you confirming Spelljammer?
That's always Greg Tito's job.
Yeah, that's true.
He's the one that gets to say that.
So there's no wrong, input, because we might think like, what if we go to the moon? And we say, well, I don't know that I want to go to the moon, but what if we, could travel through portals to strange places?
Okay.
Or, I'm not sure that we're ready to travel throughout the stars, but maybe there could be flying ships, something like that, right? We can kind of compromise. And that's what I'd say with new players and like with kids. Kids will come up with crazy ideas. Right?
Yeah.
What if we're all robots? And you're like, well, maybe there could be some situations that are like that. Like maybe you get to put on a giant mech suit at some point, right? And we get to have these big battles, right? Or we, anything like that, right? So you just take the ideas they give you and maybe moderate it a bit. But in general, as DM for this, kind of what we're doing in this approach, let them hash it out because it might solve itself.
Okay.
And then if you need to kind of step it down, you can say, hey, just want to bring us down a little bit from where we're talking. Not planning on running, a robot campaign, but here's what sounds cool to me. What do you think? Right?
Okay.
But I like new players. They'll actually come up with the newer they are, they don't think a thing has to be just a certain way. So they'll tend to come up with really good feedback that energizes everybody. All right, should we try to do an example of this together?
Yes.
Don't worry, I'm just as.
But we're doing it together though. Like you're gonna help, right?
Yeah, totally.
Collaborative. Totally. Okay.
Collaborative. All right.
Okay.
So my guidance to you, step 1, is we're going to do a fantasy Seattle in the style of Eberron, which I know you like Eberron.
Oh, okay.
With so it's like Seattle fantasy clockwork elements, right? Like you might see like, a loader that loads boxes and, there's a lightning rail and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So,
God, I wish that were true, but okay.
I know, right? So step 2, our starting area. Seattle's pretty big and there are all the surrounding areas. What general part, and again, you're just one person, so pretend you're many, what parts of the city do you think are awesome for a fantasy campaign involving clockwork?
I have been picturing Pioneer Square in Seattle, which is Seattle's oldest neighborhood. And also the scene, the real life location of underground Seattle, where the original Seattle was before the fire, and then they just basically built Seattle on top of it. But you can still go visit the underground, and it's always just been such a creepy, weird place that I have always thought this would be really cool, a cool setting for a D&D world.
Oh, I love that. Do they have any of those like? In this underground area, did they do things like take people captives and stuff like that? Like we have that in Portland. I don't know if Seattle has that. Like they would apparently get you, passed out in a tavern, and then they'd take you through these tunnels, and you'd wake up on a ship serving it. Apparently, way back.
In our version of Seattle, or did this in the
That's
real
true.
Seattle?
That's true. We can just make it up.
Because I really like that. I was also when you were asking about themes, which I know you haven't asked me about yet, but I was definitely feeling like a disappearance kind of, like
Cool.
there's things happening.
So when I was thinking about this, like I thought about like, because I go there for PAX, the convention area and downtown are great for like urban intrigue.
Yeah.
The docks are, interesting places. And even like, an area like Renton, that sort of idea of being like in the shadow of the fantasy metropolis can also be cool. So, so these are all good. All right. So we got some good, I love your Pioneer Square and Underground Seattle. So let's go to step 3, cool locations. So now let's choose like actual locations. It can be, a building, a tavern, a small area. What's cool in Seattle?
There is right by the market. There's this little area called Post Alley that is it's an alley. And there's just like cool little storefronts, but it's all like cobblestones and just kind of narrow, windy, steep hills. And I've just always loved Post Alley. I just like the vibe of being in there.
Yes,
so
totally.
I think that should be part of it. Now that we're kind of working with Eberron here, I feel like the monorail should play a part in this as well.
Awesome.
Which is also right downtown. And then maybe the Space Needle. I love the Space Needle too.
I love it. There was a Gamma World Wizards of the Coast adventure that involved the Space Needle like into the future, and that was great. That Space Needle is great, right? It can be some kind of arcane power site. It can be any number of things. So yeah, it's great.
Headquarters for something, for someone.
Yes. I was also thinking things like that Pike's Place Market could be run by criminals. And I thought of recently in a show, you talked about the idea of like a beholder wearing a ton of spectacles. Like they might need glasses, right? And I was thinking, that could be a great character there. And that's an example of fleshing things out. Like we could flesh it out further by saying like, like maybe the monorail is run by this beholder with like eyeglasses on every single eye because it has poor vision. And maybe like it's always looking at its clock using telekinesis or something, to see if things are in time.
Yeah, I like the idea of a market because things always go wrong. And that's also like, like the Grand Bazaar, like people like disappearing from the market. It's so if we can
you're already linking it. I like it. Yeah.
And Post Alley and the market are kind of the same. So
I also thought about
that whole area.
Benaroyal Hall, where the Acquisitions Incorporated shows are, could be a great place for like magical shows to be conducted. But I like this. I love Post Alley, monorail, Space Needle. This is fantastic.
What about the gum wall?
I don't know the gum wall. There's a gum wall?
I don't even know if it still exists. It's probably been destroyed since COVID because it's disgusting. And it was always gross, but there was an area right outside of the market. You kind of go down the stairs and it's like literally like chewed up bubble gum all over the wall. Like people just walk past there, pull out their gum and stick it to the wall. But maybe it leaves its messages for, other people.
That could somehow be really interesting. Like a message wall. See, that's the way you could take that kind of thing that really exists, and then you can. I like that.
Sort of like the version, like the hex bloods that I'm obsessed with from Van Richten's Guide, pulling off their fingernails and their toenails and leaving them behind. Like maybe you could like pluck a piece of gum, whatever the equivalent is in D&D, and take it with you. And now like you're basically like have this little walkie-talkie to the person that it belonged to.
Oh man, that needs some working on. That is cool. That's a neat idea. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that when you think about things that are modern or real life, and you're like, well, what would be the fantasy equivalent? But especially if we're like in a clockwork version, like that could be really sort of interesting. Yeah. And even a message wall, it might be like, imagine like in college when you tear off those little slips of paper, but maybe now you're in contact with them somehow, right? Yes. Like that could be a limited little back and forth thing. Oh, that's great.
Okay.
All right. So then themes to guide play. You've already said kidnapping people. People are being mysteriously kidnapped. What else is going
on? I feel like there would also be I like the idea of like urban legend but like urban legend come to life. Like it's people are starting to say like they've seen this thing, whatever it is that's.
Oh, that's great.
Legend,
and see,
it's
this
happening.
is the kind of thing where if we had like 5 other people with us, right, we would start tossing around urban legends, and we'd probably spend like 10 minutes laughing about bizarre urban legends. We'd probably choose one and go, yeah, that one's coming to life. Or maybe a couple of them have come to life.
Yes. Oh gosh.
Like,
what if it's like, I don't know, some portal to like the urban legends storage center. What if something has been broken, and what if there's these are infiltrating our world? I don't know, but this would be fun. I like the idea.
Yeah, I love it.
I love urban legend. I love ghost stories and things like that. So I would love to have something like that come into play in this world where maybe they're not just stories that have been handed down from generations to generations for no reason. Maybe maybe it's true.
That's fantastic. Wow, these are so good. Yeah, I had things that, I thought I liked, but these are so much better. Like I thought one thing that's funny is it's convention season. Could be wacky, like that could give you a whole attitude. Or something is waking from its watery slumber.
I definitely had obviously water should play into this in some way. Yes. Yeah. And I like, maybe because I'm really thinking about Ravenloft a lot these days, but I like mist and fog and, you know how Seattle gets that really, in Portland probably too, gets that really thick, low fog.
Yeah. I just had an idea because I so love your horrid nightmare about the eyes in the back of the head thing. Like, what if that's associated with the urban legends coming to life? Like, people see this person, or this image of a person with eyes in the back of their head, right?
Oh my gosh. Or what if everybody starts having that nightmare of them waking up with the eyes on the back of their head?
Yes. See, there we go. All right. So now 3 threats to our fantasy Seattle clockwork setting.
Okay. Oh,
which one?
Oh, right. We just did themes. Well, I guess the threats are something is kidnapping people, taking people away. What can we have with conventions? I love the idea of convention season because that just brings so many people into our little town here.
Yeah.
I think something should happen that will. Like we want our townspeople to feel a real sense of pending doom or desperation, like something maybe is happening with their commerce, or maybe their big industry is conventions, and maybe that's being threatened in some way. But I think people start to act real crazy when they're feeling desperate, and I kind of totally like the idea of just having this little group of adventurers that's like, you all need to calm down. We need to figure this out.
One thing we can always play with, it's maybe a little too obvious, but if there were a congregation of coastal wizards, right?
Like
these
wizards of the coast?
That are of the coast.
Okay.
They could either be bringing dire portents, or perhaps they've suddenly appeared, having not been seen for in years or something like that. That could be a threat.
Yes.
Or maybe they run the convention and they've disappeared, or I don't know. It could be
Are they good wizards or are they bad wizards? Or do we not know that? I don't know. Maybe they've purchased the convention.
Oh, there we go.
And we don't know if they're good or bad. Maybe that's what we have to find out. Or part of what we have to find out.
So that's perfect. So as DM, I would be thinking, these coastal wizards who purchased these conventions, could they be linked to the urban legends coming to life?
It happened around the same time.
Yeah, so it could be all of them, right? Maybe they're all in on this, or maybe there's just the one of them that has this secret plan and has been sort of manipulating the others into taking this action. So that's and I wouldn't say that out loud, but I'd be making these notes like, maybe that's what's going to happen. That's great. All right, what else do we want threat-wise? One last threat.
Can it be like a environmental threat?
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe we should throw in some earthquakes. I don't know. Or the Ring of Fire. Maybe, we could do our Ring of Fire, the volcanoes that are surrounding our fair city. And don't anger them. Don't wake them from their slumber.
That's awesome.
Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, and then there could be that question, is this a different threat? Is this the same thing that's tied to these urban legends? Perfect. I love it. So there you are. We have this world that is a fantasy Clockwork Seattle. We know that we're going to start we're going to use these areas of the city, the underground Seattle, the Pioneer Square. We have cool locations, our Post Alley, cobblestone market area, the monorail. We have the Space Needle and maybe this message wall. We know that the themes are going to be around these mysterious kidnappings, urban legends coming to life, which is great. And people are having this recurring nightmare. And it's convention season, people.
On top of everything.
On top of everything. I mean, that's kind of the way real life works. It's on top of everything. It's convention season.
Yep.
And then we have the threats of persons being kidnapped. We have the convention industry being threatened and coastal wizards have purchased it. And then this Ring of Fire. I mean, right?
Yes.
So when you do this process, what I've found is players will really remember all of the stuff that we said because of the fact that they had a stake in it and helped design it. They'll remember all these things. And as their characters, on day one, there might be rumors about these things, but as they begin to experience them, they're going to be really excited about them because they already feel like it's like they watched the trailer, right? They feel like, yeah, I'm connected to this, and they're going to be memorable, and they'll know way more about the campaign than they would otherwise. So, yeah.
How fun.
What do you think?
I love it. I want to start playing in it right now.
Well, I'm going to take these notes. I'm going to write them up.
No way.
And anybody, I'm going to write them up. And anybody who wants a copy of what you and I dreamed up and of the process itself will be able to go to my website, alphastream.org. And if they sign up, they will get these. They'll get them free. They'll get this and they can use it in their campaign. These notes and our example.
Are you kidding?
No, not at all.
That's awesome. Okay, so people can go there and get these tips on how to do this in their own games.
Subscribe to the mailing list, and I'll get you all these rules and what you and I dreamed up. You can play in Shelley's Clockwork World of horror.
And yours. It's our world.
And fantasy. Yes,
we're collaborating.
And my dog.
And the dog. What's your dog's name?
He is Chewy.
Chewy. Okay. I feel
He's
like
a Labradoodle.
Oh, Chewy. Oh, sweetie.
Maybe he can show up in the adventure.
Somehow he's going to have to. Probably that's who saves us all. Okay. Did you give us the name of your website? And can you give it to us again? It is
alphastream.org.
Okay. So I kind of feel like even if I weren't involving my players in this is actually just a really fun exercise for any dungeon master to just start creating a world and some cool story hooks.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice to involve.
My son and I used it to write the adventure we're going to kickstart. Like we just started, what do you think? Do you like the idea of visiting a town? Do you like the idea of a tower, a dungeon? Tower, okay. Do you, and just go through it like that.
Yeah. And I think also that when you're saying, do you want to do this or this, that maybe could be a good way to also help those new players figure out, not keep them on rails, but kind of in the beginning, they might want to be a little bit on rails until they figure out I can literally do whatever I want here. What a fun idea, and what a fun way to introduce people to Dungeons and Dragons. So now that after we went through this exercise and we know our Clockwork Seattle is the setting, and then we would go off and we would create characters that we think would exist in this world. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, it'd be fun, right? Because then now a bunch of players would probably choose things from the Eberron world to feed off of that, like an artificer, right? That'd be great. But then because we know that there are all these kind of mystery angles, being any kind of investigator, like a rogue mastermind, right? It helps everybody make characters that they're excited about and that they think will be useful. So if we came up with a world that's just nothing but World of War, then you want to build that kind of character. But here, it's going to be a little more investigative and figuring things out and intrigue. So you'll build accordingly and feel good about the choices you're making. So.
It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. I'm so excited that people will get to actually maybe drop some of these nuggets into their games as well.
Yay.
So fun.
Well, if anybody has any questions, they can hit me up on Twitter @AlphaStream. And I can also answer questions about the process there.
Okay. And then, so is Twitter the best place to get a hold of you? Where else, your website, Twitter?
Yeah, the Twitter and the blog, because on alphastream.org, you can send me messages directly through the contact page. I like answering questions about the Acquisitions Incorporated campaigns people are running there, and it's great. So yeah, and Twitter is always fun too, because then other people can chime in as well, which is usually a good thing.
Yes, that's true. And then usually a good thing. And then what about your podcast?
So Mastering Dungeons is super fun with my superhero and mentor, Sean Merwin. Every week, we co-host this show where we review the latest D&D news, all the cool things that Shelley and Greg have said. And we also usually take either a recent product and review it, or we'll think about some aspect of the game and come up with tips for people on how to run it, sort of like we did today. We'll choose some topic and go deep into it.
Tons of great resources. And I know you have some cool projects coming up. I don't know if you're ready to talk about them yet, but if people start following you
the two coolest things that are on the horizon, I wrote with for MCDM. They did this amazing Kickstarter for their Kingdoms and Warfare book, and they were kind enough to ask me to write the adventure for it. And that adventure is really fun because it takes all of their cool ideas on how warfare can work. And then the adventure walks you through that process. So you get to use the rules as you're going through the adventure. I'm very excited for when that comes out. I think that's going to be really neat. It's through play testing, apparently, and people are digging it.
Cool.
And then it's going to be very soon launching a Kickstarter for the adventure that my son and I wrote called The Clockwork Tower. And I hope that people will back that because we're spending money on art and layout, and I'm learning a lot about that side of the industry, and it's very daunting to go, okay, I now need people to back this or we're going to be in the red. So we're hopeful, but it's fun for us to learn. We had a ton of fun working together to write on it, and yeah, so it's going to be neat to see how it goes.
Oh, that's such a cool project for you and your son to have done. I'm excited.
Thanks. Yeah, it was great. We did it during the pandemic because we were like, how can we strengthen your writing and kind of keep you engaged in school at the very beginning when it was all happening. And so this was a fun way for us to, once a week, twice a week, sit down and write a small piece of it. We would do like a 30-minute piece because, he was 14 when we started. So you only have but so much attention span, but it was fun to, we'd sit down, we'd do like a part of an encounter, and then we'd do another part, and we'd finish it and on to the next piece, and a lot of fun.
And what a great way to work on some of those school skills without realizing you're doing it. You're having fun doing it, the writing and probably some math involved
outlining
in
there.
And analytical.
Well, he's very good at math, and so it was great.
Very cool. I would expect nothing less from your
and
offspring.
The ideas he came up with. There's a person you can visit and get wondrous potions, and the ideas that he helped come up with for those were great.
Oh, how exciting. Well, I look forward to that. I look forward to backing that and more of whatever it is you're doing and involved in, because you're just a dream. You're the best. We love you. So
you're very kind. Thank you. I try. I've been lucky in my career to have just wonderful, wonderful mentors, and there's so many good people in this in this hobby. So I just try to follow in their footsteps and apply what I've learned from them. So.
Well, you are also very kind, and you must manifest all that good stuff by putting it out there yourself. Thank you. And I'm excited to play around with this. My son and I might do an exercise like this and see what world we come up with. I'll let you know.
I love it.
All right. Thank you so much for being here.
I have ideas on what that world might be like.
Oh, I can definitely. There's going to be some sound effects for sure. Oh, here he comes.
Exactly.
Let's stop this before he. Oh no. Okay. Thank you.
I see one of the threats to the campaign behind you. Bye.
He is always a threat. Always.